with money.
Okay, good morning. I had a nice detailed resume to read out, but then I realized that my phone can't do two things. I can't have my phone and also do the recording. So from memory, Professor Shomu Banerjee, a very dear friend of mine. I'm glad he drove all the way from Atlanta to be here, but he is the boss of economics, and I've written a few books and only Andy buys them. He has written just one book which sells at least 400 copies in University of New South Wales in Sydney, Australia, and around the world. So, man of many qualifications. His research supervisor is a Nobel laureate, Leo Hurwitz. I try to remember that name. And the guy is a black belt Aikido, has his own dojo, and humble enough to tell me, Bhuvan, maybe these days I can handle 4 or 5. If 2 of them are armed, it's okay. I said, these days I can't handle any in my dreams either. So that's my friend Shomu Banerjee, and I asked him to pick up, I wanted him to talk about Aikido. He said next time. So today he's going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is allocation of resources without money. So please join me in welcoming Professor Shomu Banerjee. All yours.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for having me. Unfortunately, as an economist, I have the reputation of being in the dismal science. And everyone is always asking me about the stock market and unemployment and is there going to be inflation and things like that, and I have to disappoint people and tell them that I'm sorry, I can't help you with that because that's not the kind of economics I do. So then people are saying, well, what the heck do you do? So as a mechanism design, so what on earth is that? So I'll be giving you a sense of what economists do. It's different from watching over the stock market and predicting what's going to happen with the economy. And as Bhuvan was saying, it's about resource allocation. So the way economists look at the big picture is that we go out into markets. Typically, we bring out money out of our pockets, we buy a car. So a car has been allocated to me in exchange for money, right? So that we think of most resource allocation that happens through markets and through trades. But there are lots of other areas where there is no money exchanged. And these are sometimes called matching markets. So for example, there are a whole list of people who need kidneys. So the patient who needs kidneys, and the supply of kidneys is really, really small. And obviously you can't trade it for money. So how do you assign kidneys to the few kidneys that we do get? How do you assign them to the different people? There are other kinds of matching issues that happen, but I'm going to give you a little bit of history first. And let's see if I can make this move. Backwards. Oh. Backwards. Thank you. Yes.
I thought you were a professor, Shomu.
I know, right? But I never teach with PowerPoints. So, what is mechanism design? So this is the grand old man of mechanism design, Leo Hurwitz. He was an amazing human being. He was a Polish lawyer, actually. The only degree he ever had in his life was a law degree. And he came to the United States at the age of 22 as a refugee, escaping the Nazis from Europe. And by 28, not having earned a PhD, never having taken too many classes in economics, he becomes an associate professor at the University of Iowa. And in economics, brilliant man, wrote a ton of things, and came up with this idea of mechanism design, which is the following. Can we design a decentralized mechanism whose outcomes meet some social objectives? So this is actually turning the standard thing that economists do on its head. In economics, typically we look at an institution or a mechanism, market mechanism, whatever it may be, and we ask about how is it performing? Are there things that are wrong with the way markets work? Can we fix them? Right? So we start with the mechanism and typically go to the performance of the mechanism, and we ask ourselves if we can fiddle around with things to make things better. He turned this question on its head. He said, suppose I want to reach a particular kind of outcome. Can I design a mechanism to get us there? Okay. So there are many illustrations of this, but in recent years, in 2012 actually, a couple of economists got the Nobel Prize for continuing his work. And these are matching problems that can be thought of in the following way. So room assignment problems. So in my department, we have 26 faculty, there are 26 rooms. Which faculty gets which room? Different people may have different preferences. So we've got a men's restroom on one side and a female restroom on the other side, and most of the men want to be on the male side and the females want to be on the female side. If you're older and you cannot use the stairs, you want to be close to the only elevator that we have. So different people have preferences over these rooms. How can I assign the rooms in a way so that this matching is a stable match? So no two people, after I've assigned the rooms, want to swap. So we think of that as efficiency. So we want to assign these rooms in a way so that we have an efficient allocation. Roommate pairing. My daughter is a sophomore in college, and I'm glad she had a wonderful first-year roommate. I hear so many horror stories. How do you pair two people together, strangers together in a room and expect them to spend a whole year? Fraternity, sorority rush, school choice. In many parts of the world especially, you take a university level entrance exam, and then based on the level of your score, you can apply for engineering programs or sociology or history or whatever, right? So how can we allocate people properly in this kind of an environment? The one that I'll be talking a little bit about is the National Residence Matching Program. So every year, more than 40,000 doctors graduate with an MD, and they have to do their 2-year residency. And last year there were 42,000 doctors approximately in about 30,000 hospitals to which they had to be assigned. And it used to be in the olden days, in the 1950s, there was a lot of churn in that market. Doctors would get assigned to hospitals, but after 6 months they decided they didn't like it, they would leave. Hospitals have to search for a new person. There was a lot of wastage in that system. So economists came up with a way to match doctors and residences. How did that work? Well, basically what they do is they interview, and every doctor lists the top hospitals that they want to go to in their order of ranking. And hospitals do the same with the candidates that they have interviewed for each position. And all this goes into this black box. There's a magic algorithm that works. It literally takes just over a minute to run, and 40,000 lives are decided. And the match is stable. People are happy with who they have been paired with. Hospitals like the doctors they got, doctors like the hospitals they got, nobody wants to move. It's absolutely miraculous and magical. And what I want to talk about is actually the foundation of this matching algorithm is a mathematical genius named Lloyd Shapley, who won the Nobel Prize in 2012 in economics of all things, because mathematics does not have a Nobel Prize. But he came up with this beautiful algorithm for matching, and almost all the matching problems that we do in this world are based on some variation of his algorithm. So I want to give you a very basic sense of how this works. And it's kind of fun and cool. So I'm a teacher, so I'll be teaching you something new that you're not likely to see anywhere. Okay? So I hope you have some fun with it. So we talked about a little bit about kidneys, donor kidney and recipient problems. One of the areas that a lot of economists are talking about is judicial clerkship, this total chaos. So people who finish law school want to do a clerkship, and of course you have preferences, right? I may want to work in the Supreme Court, one of the Supreme Court justices, or I may want to work on a particular circuit. And so there are a lot of these students who are going to graduate, and they want to get these clerkships. Judges, of course, also want these clerks, some of the smartest brains in the world. And what's happening is for every single position, a judge receives 300 to 400 applications. And what's happening is, instead of, they want to hire at the end of the third year, right? But applications are coming in at the beginning of the second year of law school. Because these are people who haven't even graduated, and they have 2 more years of law school left, and judges are getting these applications that they have to read. And then what happens is, if I get assigned to a particular judge who is not my first best, then I call my first best judge and say, hey, look, I have an offer from there. Can you give me an offer? It's a crazy, chaotic market. And tens of thousands of people are involved in this chaos. So they're trying to come up with a way to match them that works better. Questions?
Have you considered matching couples?
Yes, in fact, that's what we'll be talking about. The quintessential matching problem is called a marriage problem. And that's exactly what I'll be talking about. Okay. So you preempted.
Oh my.
So these are the two people who won the Nobel Prize in 2012, Alvin Roth and Lloyd Shapley. Alvin Roth was one of the people who designed the National Resident Matching Program, and also there's a kidney matching program going on in the United States that he's kind of the champion of. And Lloyd Shapley is a mathematician who came up with a basic algorithm in the 1950s, which drives all of these things. So I'm going to look at two-sided matching problems. So the room matching problem that I talked about is a one-sided matching problem, right? You get assigned to a room, the room doesn't have to like you back. But a two-sided matching problem is like, we call it a marriage problem, because you get paired with a partner, and you have to like your partner, and your partner has to like you. So we typically think of this as a situation where there are men and there are women, and every person will get, every man will get matched to one woman, and each man has a preference over all the women. So you have a list of preferences. I like A over B over C or whatever, and if, let's say, I don't get these top three choices, maybe I want to remain single. That is okay. You don't need to have preferences over everyone. You can have a truncated preference where you say, okay, if I don't get these choices, I'd rather remain single. Okay, women too have preferences over all the men. Okay, and the magical thing is, how do you even know that there is a stable match possible? Okay, where nobody wants to switch afterwards. Well, it turns out there is. So let me go to the algorithm, because this is the cool part. It's called the deferred acceptance algorithm, DEAA, deferred acceptance algorithm. And here's how. So what I've done is I've created a little example. There are three guys, Zeno, Eve, and Zach, okay, who have preferences over Alice, Blair, and Carol. Okay. So Zeno likes A over B over C, Eve likes C over B over A, Zach likes C over A over B, etc. Right? And all the women have their preferences over three people. So let's see how the deferred acceptance algorithm works here. The reason why it's called deferred acceptance is because you are temporarily assigned to someone until someone better comes along. And you jump the person you're assigned to, and you get the next person.
So noted, we should.
Okay.
I think Andy is using this algorithm.
Will it be nice?
So it's kind of cool. So let's watch and see how it goes. So we're going to start with the men doing the proposing. We can do it just the other way around as well. So we can have the females proposing and run the algorithm. It doesn't matter which way you do it. You're going to get a stable match. So let's do it with the males. So in the first round, what's going to happen is Zeno's going to pick his first best, which is Alice. Eve is going to pick Carol, and Zach is also going to pick Carol, because those are the top alternatives. No, I can't get the laser pointer to work. Okay, thank you. Okay, so they go with their top choices, right? So then Alice over here, she has received an acceptance, an offer, a proposal from her worst choice, but it's the only one she got. So she temporarily accepts him. Okay, so she accepts him. But what about Blair and Carol? Okay, well, Blair hasn't received anything, so she has nothing to do. And Carol has received two proposals, one from Y, one from Z, and obviously likes Y better than Z. So she's gonna accept Y, okay, and reject Z. Okay. So whoever gets rejected gets to go again. So in the third round, Zach has been rejected by Carol, so he goes with his next best, which is Alice. Now Alice has already been linked up with X, but now receives a proposal from Z, whom she likes better. So she drops X and accepts Z. Okay. And in round 5, so a person who's been rejected, which is X, right, goes with Blair, right? And Blair has not received any proposals. So she just says, okay, I'll accept you. And so we end up with X, Y, and Z being matched up with B, C, and A. So it turns out that this algorithm is a stable algorithm. Nobody would want to swap with anyone. And it's what's called a stable match. So remember what I was telling you about the work of Hurwitz. You have a goal that you want to reach, which is in this case a stable match. And the question is, how do I design a mechanism to get to that point? And so deferred acceptance algorithm is a way to do that. So this is at the foundation of all these matching mechanisms. So now I've got another one, a funny one from one of my consulting work, but we don't have to do that if you don't need to.
So how does that handle the situation where the pool is constantly changing? So thinking about, kidney donors and recipients.
Right.
New donors become available, new recipients become
So
available.
the kidney donor problem has two different types of issues. So, and one of those we're not so good at dealing with. So the first one, the one that we're not so good at dealing with is you may have different types of patients. Maybe some are more sick, some are more healthy or younger, or would be better recipients of a particular kidney that just came up, right? And there's also considerations of geography. So if a kidney has been available in Sarasota, we'd probably want to go with some person who is in Sarasota waiting for a kidney rather than someone in Miami, because then I have to fly it over and, it'd be tax wasted. These kinds of problems we cannot really solve too well. And the American Medical Association has certain guidelines. They're not optimal. We try to follow them. And there are certain economists working in this area, but we don't really have good solutions to this problem. The other part, we do have the solutions to the kidney matching program that's going on, which is the following. So let's say my son needs a kidney, and I'm perfectly happy to give one of mine to him, right? But I'm a bad match. What do we do? Well, it turns out that under our current system, if there is a donor, then I get first priority. My child will get the first priority for a kidney. So if there's another pair of people where one person wants to donate a kidney to their relatives, let's say, but their kidney is not a good match, but that person's kidney is a good match for my son, and my kidney is a good match for their person, then 4 people get together in a hospital on the same day simultaneously, kidneys are exchanged. And they've done it with up to, I think, 12 people. It's Mass General. Yeah. And it's kind of amazing because it could be a more complex chain where, my kidney is good for this person and that person's kidney is good for that person, and so you have this whole cycle. And so this kidney exchange programs that have started have radically increased the number of kidney recipients in the United States. So it's only been around for less than 10 years and it's doing extremely well. So this problem we've been able to solve. But the other problem, which is the shortage of kidneys, is a huge problem to begin with. Other questions?
Got a question.
Yeah.
About the national medical residency
Yeah.
thing. My son's going through that right now.
Oh, okay.
Apparently they're having the match in March.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. At the end of February, that's when they, yeah.
Will he get a job?
Absolutely. Not a problem. It works beautifully. So when they first designed the latest variation of the National Resident Matching Program in the 1970s, what happened was that they had some churn. And the churn was happening between people who were either affianced to each other or married to each other, couples basically, who cared not only about where they wanted to go, but also where they wanted their partner to go. So now what they have done is they've modified the algorithm to include couples. So couples are not viewed as couples, but as people who are looking for 2 positions simultaneously in the same city or the same hospital, or they want to be close to each other typically. And now, so that churn has been eliminated as well. It's an amazingly beautiful algorithm that works with tens of thousands of people and can be scaled. And it literally takes less than 2 minutes to run the algorithm and allocate everyone. It's beautiful from an economist's point of view. So this is the kind of work I do. How do I explain this to my mother-in-law?
So, in my field of work, the flagship term these days is machine learning,
Yes.
wherein we expect to write algorithms which
Yes.
will learn from the allocations they have done in the past.
I see.
So, can you pass some comments on how machine learning can or is being applied to this algorithm?
So I'm not specifically knowledgeable enough about machine learning as such, but I know that Hurwicz's work is being used in certain areas of computer science. So the decision makers, instead of being humans, they're computers. So let's think of a very simple situation where in the olden days, there used to be a centralized printer in the office, and there are 20 people who are sending things to be printed. I'm sending 50 pages, you're sending 1 page. Who gets priority over the printing, right? So that's a resource allocation problem, because there's only a narrow bandwidth, and only so many things can be printed. Nothing can be printed simultaneously. It has to be sequential. Should it be just in terms of the order in which you sent it, right? Then if I'm printing 200 pages, you just have to wait for 1 page, which may not be the most efficient thing, right? So these kinds of issues have also been dealt with using mechanism design. So mechanism design has been taken from economics and applied to computer science and machine learning, where you first come up with what is my desired performance objective. And then you try to design a mechanism that brings about that objective.
But then why do you say that this is new? Because, for example, operation research is applied in traffic management.
So one of one of the things that makes this different and difficult is that, take the National Resident Matching Program. What incentive do I have as a doctor to list my hospitals truthfully? So when they ask me for the list of hospitals, rank them, and I say A is my top choice, B is my second, and C is my third. Okay, and maybe everybody wants to go to hospital A, right? And I think, well, I don't have a chance of an A, but I want B, right? So why don't I then say B at top, and maybe I'll have a better chance of getting B? Well, it turns out that this mechanism that's designed is what we call it incentive compatible. It's cheat proof, basically. Because we're dealing with human beings who can be strategic in their thinking, we got to think about mechanisms that are cheat proof. And this is so with machine learning, you don't have to worry about cheat proofness, because machines, once you program them, they'll work in a particular way. They're not strategic thinkers, right? So in a way, the machine, any of the mechanism design stuff that's applied in the machine world is a little bit easier, because you're not thinking strategically. The problem with economists, and why we are made fun of all the time, is if I say, tomorrow at noon, please avoid that intersection over there, because there's going to be a huge traffic jam. And if enough people hear me and believe me, there's not going to be a traffic jam. And they're going to say, Shomu, you're a lousy predictor, right? Because people change their behavior based on the information they receive, which is what makes economics so difficult and forecasting so difficult.
So the $1 million question, are we moving towards a recession?
So now, changing my gear from a mechanism design person talking about I think we are. I don't think there's any way around it. We have ballooned our deficit, and we're already past full employment. So in America, we think of 4% unemployment as being full employment. So that means at any point of time, about 4% of the people are between jobs. They're sort of looking for new places, new positions. So there's going to be a certain number of people always in that unemployed category looking for jobs. And that's about 4%. And we are way past that at this point. And so what happens at this point is, if I need a new tax accountant in a company, there's a shortage of tax accountants. So the only way I can get another tax accountant is by giving them more money and stealing them, right? And so the cost of acquiring another accountant just increases. So this leads to inflation. And so what's going to happen now is, and also all the trade barriers that have been put up is going to significantly affect us in the next year. We're going to see the prices of things rise as a result of the trade barrier. And so there is going to be a lot of inflationary pressure. Okay, and what that means, of course, the Federal Reserve, their job is to control inflation. So they're going to pull back the money supply to try and keep the economy from overheating. And so that means everything's going to slow down, right? And that's what's going to, interest rates are going to go up and there's going to be a recession. So I would say by this time next year, things will be not quite so good. And my prediction is, again, bad prediction maybe, my prediction is that we'll have a situation with high inflation and unemployment at the same time, which is called a stagflation. It's not a good situation to me. It's one of the harder problems to handle. But if not by the end of next year, definitely into the spring of 2020, we'll be entering a recessionary period. I don't see how we cannot. Unfortunately, so that's a bad news. But there are good news.
Thanks, dude.
People are getting jobs and kidneys are getting matched. Good things are also happening.
Presidents are getting a job.
Okay.
I just had a fun last year.
Coffee mug.
All right, so thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
We got one job for you before you take off. Today we are playing for $16 and a shot at 442 plus whatever we pulled in today. So
No, we don't put today's in today.